Well, lately I've spent a lot of time on the range teaching classes, and I thought I'd do a video just talking about diagnosing your targets. There's kind of one pattern that shows up on most targets, students' targets, and if you, it can be difficult to read if you're not know what you're looking for. So, short version, what it looks like on the pattern is a seatbelt style pattern. So if you're a right-handed shooter, if you're looking at the target, it will start at the top right and work it down low left. There might be a little bit of a variance, so maybe the bulk of the center of the target has the hits, but then there's a handful of them that kind of go up and right and a handful of them low and left. Maybe more or less, maybe they trend more one way than the other, but that's kind of the gist of the target. Like I said, it can be tough to kind of pinpoint what's happening because it looks like multiple directions, or it could be while you're shooting, first shot, then first shot, second shot, then 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. It could vary around the target, or maybe it starts kind of trending up higher and then after a while it goes lower, and it's tough to kind of pinpoint what happens. So, short story, if the rounds are going high and to the right, if you're a right-handed shooter, that is caused from staring at your sight. What happens is you're shooting, and while the sight bounces around in front of your eye, most people trying your very best to be a good boy, stay target focused, but while that sight keeps bouncing, every once in a while it can be tough to just get a glimpse of that and you start watching the sight, or sometimes you're shooting and the sight goes somewhere you don't expect it to, and then you kind of watch it go over that place on the target. Then the next thing you know, you're watching the sight recoil, and if you're not staring where you want the bullets to go or staring at the sight itself, it's likely just going to recoil up on the target because you're not returning it or pushing it back to the middle. So if you see hits high, or mostly for a right-handed shooter, they'll be high right, that's from staring at the sight. That can happen with both irons and optics. A couple ways to work on that. I would encourage you to play with dot brightness. For most people, if you turn up the dot super, super bright, where it kind of starts to starburst, or it's like you're looking at the sun, it will be more tempting to stare at the sight. If you turn it too low, then people end up looking at it just because they can't find it. So somewhere in the middle of the road, maybe slightly dimmer than kind of like whatever the middle setting would be. Seems to be about right for most people. That's where I prefer to run mine. But in dry fire and live fire, I want to train myself that I could have the thing turned up so bright that the brightness won't go any higher, but still maintaining target focus. Obviously, it's easier said than done. The other trick you could do is occluding the dot. So it'd be taking, well, I've got a sight, but pistol sight, I suppose. But taking tape or a cover, covering the side of the optic that's facing the muzzle. What this causes is I can no longer look through the sight and see the target, but you'll have one brain looking through the sight, seeing the dot on that backer. I like just using black electrical tape. It doesn't make a mess on the optic. Your other eye kind of sees everything else, and your brain will put the two together. So kind of like binocular vision. That doesn't stop you from staring at the sight, unfortunately, but it'll punish you a bit if you do, and hopefully make you more aware. Because as I've been told, the first step is admitting you have a problem. So if you at least have some awareness to know that once in a while you're staring at the sight, that'll go a long way towards fixing it. And the occlusion, I think, is quite helpful at like kind of helping you catch when it happens. The other part of this, kind of diagnosing the other half of the seatbelt, is low left shots. Most people, I think, would be familiar with what's going on there. It's some amount of your firing hand pushing into the gun, trying to stop it from recoiling. There's a few different, well, kind of mindsets that people have. The first one could be you're trying to shoot the gun straight, you feel the gun recoiling, and you want to push into it to stop it. So you know the gun's about to kick in your hand, and you try to time a push to eliminate that amount of kick or recoil or fight it. Obviously, that's not going to be very productive because it's going to limit your ability to shoot the gun straight. The other one, sometimes people will see when they're shooting, your target focused, you see the sight start to lift. You don't like that, or you try to reduce how much it can lift. So that would also cause to push down, trying to limit how high the dot recoils on the target. Unfortunately, that's not going to be very successful either, because normally in the amount of you pushing down, trying to stop that recoil to happen, you'll see hits go low, typically for a right-handed shooter, low and left. So there's where the seatbelt comes from. Staring at the sight, pushing into the gun. For a lot of people, they'll kind of switch between those two. So a common drill I really like is called doubles. To simplify it, you aim the gun at the target. Still, you get the grip you like. The draw isn't assessed at all. You shoot a rapid fire pair, so as fast you could pull the trigger. To elaborate, you're pulling the trigger so fast and firing at a speed that you can't make a conscious choice or decision about the second shot. You're pulling the trigger inside of your kind of reactionary gap. So you're along for the ride. You can't make any changes along the way, but you'll have awareness of what happens afterwards. So, for example, you're watching your sight and you might see it flick one way, track right back to the target, or the pattern of it change. In the moment, all you can kind of do is just say, dang it, and be annoyed. But then afterwards, you have the awareness of what happened. You can try to fix it. So doing that type of drill, like those rapid fire pairs on this, it's super common to have somebody switch between the two. An example, they start staring at the sight and they see it lift up high. They don't want to do that anymore, so they try to shove to stop the sight going high. They push low, or probably the more common of the two, they're firing pairs. They feel themselves pushing into the sight, so the initial shots go low. Then they try so hard not to push on the gun, they end up kind of staring at the sight or not returning it. Then afterwards, the hits go high. So of the two, that's probably the pattern that happens most to people. The other one that happens, kind of depending on experience level, is sometimes people don't train themselves to grip the gun properly. So you tag your favorite Instagrammer that does this, but it's easy to do dry fire drills where you draw to one shot and kind of just bang one off and hitting like a steel plate, or a one-shot draw, or one reload, without having rapid fire shooting behind it or multiple shots. You don't really get punished if you don't hold on to the gun hard, or at least firmly to connect with it. So imagine drawing the gun, holding it really loosely, because that's the way you've trained yourself to. You notice the sight starts to flop kind of all over the place. You're going way higher than you want. Then making a change in your demeanor to try to clamp down or stop the gun doing that, because you've noticed the gun's moving around too much. So that could be another cause for initially not holding onto the gun hard, see hits going high, then you try to change, try to stop that from happening, and end up pushing shots low on the target. Both super annoying, just something to work through. Really, when you go shoot live ammo, all you're doing is just observing your habits. Most of us, anyway, don't have enough ammunition at their disposal, unless the government's paying for it, to go out and just shoot every single day and, base observations on that. So for most people, the play is doing dry fire training to ingrain habits that you hopefully believe will be good. Then when you make your weekly or every other week or twice a week or however often you go to the range, you could just observe your habits and what's happening, draw some conclusions from that, and take it back to your dry fire, trying to change your habits. So for the example of these things, drawing to having an appropriate grip or connection on the pistol would be a good one to start with. So you could work on just drawing the pistol to sight picture, not even pressing the trigger, just assessing, are your hands in the right spot, and are you using the correct grip pressures? Then after you look at that, kind of think it over, holster, then do it again, thinking about the pressures you're using, the hand placement, is that appropriate for shooting live ammo? Put it back in the holster, do it again. As you can imagine, if you do that over and over during your dry fire training for 3 to 5 minutes, that's a lot of repetition. Your hands will get wore out pretty quickly, and if you're kind of nitpicking your results, well, at least in my case, I'm projecting, I get pretty irritated pretty quickly if it's not perfect, which is a good place to be at, but you can get a lot of reps done in 5 minutes. If you did that 3 or 4 days a week, just a whole whopping 5 minutes a day, you'll change your behaviors. Now, whether it's good or bad, that kind of remains to be seen. So then you go out to the range, fire live ammo, and just observe. Is the gun behaving the way you want? Something else happened. Then you discovered you're doing something else you wish you weren't doing. Then it just kind of goes back to the drawing board to work on those habits. So work on it back and forth. And anyway, so those couple issues of pushing on the gun or tracking the sight can be worked on in dry fire. If you're doing, like if you like doing that doubles drill like the one I described, in dry fire, you could just pull through the trigger extra hard, harder than you would if you're firing live ammunition, and just observe what the sight does. Does the sight kind of bounce from side to side? Does it look perfect? Does it once in a while, it'll start to like go low left, or it goes high right, or it goes straight up, and then after you change your grip, it behaves differently. So you can do things like that in dry fire to try to ingrain good habits or change your habits. Then you just go to the range and see what's up and kind of check the temperature and see, is this going the right direction, or time to change our training a little bit, or your focus to make sure you're addressing some other issue that happened. So anyway, that's kind of the most common things as far as what goes on for assessing a target. That seatbelt pattern, if you look closely, you'll see happens to a fair amount of people. So a few things to look at when you're trying to correct it. Appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, and all that garbage. If you have any questions for me, drop it below. If I can answer the question easily, I'll just answer it in the comments if it's a question or a sentence or two. If it's something that requires more information to answer, I'll just make a video like this one. So appreciate you watching. Have a good day.